Recently, I made a video called What If Super Smash Bros. Had 10,000 characters? And now I want to correct some mistakes in that video, explain some omissions, and provide a little bit of context for it. This is definitely not to capitalize on the relative success of that video at all. It took me 5 months to complete the video, and that's not even factoring in the amount of time it took to make the roster itself in the first place. So I do appreciate people watching and commenting on the video. I especially appreciate the people who shared it around. The video got posted on both the r/tomorrow and r/bouldergeist subreddits quite early on, so whoever did that, I appreciate it. Yes, there's an r/bouldergeist subreddit. I have a link to the full list of characters in that roster down in the description as well. Since the work on the video was pretty tedious, the labeling of each character had a lot of mistakes. At one point I list Puffy from Nights into Dreams as being a Fighting Vipers character, or I listed Darkon instead of Pichu. This is because I started with the pictures, and then I added the text afterwards, and I ended up copy and pasting a lot of the text. I didn't make too many mistakes like that, but they are probably pretty funny. That video was intended as an April Fool's joke that got out of hand. Maybe if I did the images I could have gotten it out before April, but if I did that, I probably would have accidentally not had 10,000 characters. This part also goes without saying, but there are lots of mispronunciations in my video, especially with series like Monster Hunter or Yokai Watch that have a lot of characters I'm not familiar with. You can definitely look at the text and see I am clearly mispronouncing names. Sometimes I just straight up get characters' names wrong, and I fix it in the text, but I don't change the pronunciation. Like Manic from Sonic Underground. I mistakenly remembered it as Maverick, and that's how I say his name. Look, I could have re-recorded it, but I'm sorry I cut some corners in my 4-hour, 10,000 character roster. What are you gonna do? Cry about it? I legitimately did record all the video in one sitting. My voice and pronunciations probably degrade over time. One thing to keep in mind about the video is that some of the character choices aren't that deep. Why did I only include a few Plants vs. Zombies characters, but every single Castlevania enemy? I felt like it. I'm more of a Castlevania fan, so I added more characters from Castlevania. It's not just about how much I like each series, though. I had lots of Cartwrighter and Honor of Kings characters. Not because I like those series, but because they're very successful, and I figured, why not just look up a list of characters and add them all to fill out the roster? Sometimes it didn't occur to me to do that with other series, because in a 10,000 character roster, I can't think of all of them that deeply. If you do have characters you think would have been good for the roster, or want to criticize some character choices, I welcome that, as long as you're not being an ass about it. I just might not know very much about a series you're a fan of. I genuinely want to represent as much about video games as possible, but I also can't have that much knowledge just on my own. So that is why the roster will end up being inconsistent in places. Yes, some choices were blatant filler or just stupid, like the nearly 70 variations on Samus. I choose to believe it makes the roster more charming. That said, I do want to address some specific omissions. As commenter Filthy T points out, I forgot Q from Street Fighter. Street Fighter is a series I know a lot about, which led to me going by memory instead of looking up a list of characters. I forgot a few, but I think it's more entertaining that way. Also, I didn't know Baldhead and Faust were supposed to be the same character, but even if I knew that at the time, I still would have added them both. I also went off memory for Final Fantasy, which is why I ended up forgetting the Final Fantasy IX cast. I'm sorry to Final Fantasy IX fans. I have the game on both Steam and PS1. I promise I will play it someday. I went by memory for most of the Nintendo series too, and you can definitely see my relationship with some of the game series reflected in what characters I chose. Mario and Zelda have basically all parts of their respective franchises represented. I even went on the Mario Wiki and pressed random page to get some character choices. And then there's Fire Emblem that is very disproportionately skewed towards 3 houses. I've played exactly 3 mainline Fire Emblem games, and they are the ones with more than 2 or 3 characters. I did not, of course, do every Pokemon by memory. I had originally planned to do all the Gen 1 Pokemon, plus any other I could remember, which left me with 161 characters. I then quickly realized that wasn't feasible in a 10,000 character roster. Same with Shin Megami Tensei. I had originally planned to have all demons of the fairy race, then I just switched to having all demons. I think a roster would be more interesting if it doesn't include literally every character in a franchise. That way you can see what the creator of the roster prefers or finds interesting. But you know, there are 10,000 slots to fill and all. I also need to acknowledge the fact that I remembered every TF2 Merc besides the Sniper. That's a series where I know enough to go by memory, but not enough to be good at remembering it. This situation with Halo representation was a little odd too. At the time I had played Halo 3 ODST, but not Halo Reach. So I added all the ODST cast, but not all the Spartans in Halo Reach. Now that I know a little bit more about Halo, I probably would have added all the Spartans from Halo Reach, Halo 5, maybe some more Covenant aliens, the Prophets, and Atriox. Commenter Hippo Snippo says I should have added Purple Guy instead of specifically William Afton, and that is such a silly idea. I wish I had thought of doing that. Fantastic idea. In hindsight, I also wish I had added some characters from Scott Cawthon's pre-FNAF games. I really like the idea of adding obscure characters from the past of a big franchise or creator like this, which is a concept you might be able to see in other places in the roster already. Commenter Jail Guzman B4N points out the lack of any Mario and Luigi Brothership characters. Now, since this roster was in development for a long time, there will likely be plenty of characters from late 2024 and 2025 that are absent because I didn't know about them at the time. I wasn't opposed to adding characters from upcoming games though, which is why the Assassin's Creed Shadows or GTA 6 protagonists are here as an example. There were, however, a few times where I went back in and added characters from 2025 because I had duplicates and needed to replace some last minute, specifically with some of the indie characters at the end. I also added Obu Nobunaga from Assassin's Creed Shadows specifically for the joke. My roster has like 10 Oda Nobunagas. I also could have added Oda Nobunaga from Pokemon Conquest, but I decided not to, since that game is a crossover with Nobunaga's Ambition, and I don't really know if there's enough to differentiate the versions of the characters. Realistically, the roster is dumb enough I probably could have just done it anyways, but who cares at this point. While I am on the subject of things I didn't include because they came a little too late, I like including adaptations of characters as separate variations. You've probably noticed that by watching the video. If it had come out sooner, I 100% would have included so much Minecraft movie content. You are lucky, you didn't have to see me add Jack Black Steve, Garrett General Chungus, whatever the bad guy was named, and variations on like every mob. I actually didn't like going too crazy with variations on characters, but adaptations are the one area where it's so much fun I had to. 75 Samuses is a lot of fun too. Commenter Colin Frigale mentions the lack of any Jimmy James from Harvester. I'm genuinely disappointed in myself for not adding any Harvester characters. If you guys don't know, Harvester is a 90s FMV game that has a reputation for being really, really weird.
Of you. Maybe you're one of those pink-blooded Americans. Can you give me any reason why I shouldn't shoot you right now? I appreciate your honesty, comrade.
I'm a fan of the YouTuber Magellar, and he made a video on FMV horror while I was compiling the list of 10,000 characters. That is why I added characters from obscure titles, Frankenstein Through the Eyes of a Monster, and Bad Mojo immediately after each other. He also talked about Harvester in that video, and I just didn't add anyone from that game. I am very disappointed now. There was a period of my life where every time I watched a video that mentions any obscure video games, I immediately went to my phone to add more characters to my roster. The last comment comes from OKPK and asks where Masked Man from Mother 3 is. Fair question. I have a couple of villains from Mother 3, Yokuba and Ultimate Chimera, and all of the party members in that game. Honestly, it's mostly for petty reasons. I do not like Masked Man as a Smash character idea because the way his story ends just makes it depressing to see him in Smash. I would be able to excuse it in a 10,000 character roster. I mean, Noose Man is a playable character, but Masked Man is a popular Smash choice, and I don't want to include him now out of spite. Watch this video if you want me to explain in more detail. Like I mentioned in the 10,000 roster video, I did not want to include characters from non-video game series. The specific line I drew was that I can't add a character that would require licensing a non-game series. So no Android 21. One thing that kind of clashes with the rule though is, of all things, cars. I can't add any real-life car brands, so that's why I have picks like Gran Turismo Car, which I guess would just have all the branding stripped out to make a generic car themed around Gran Turismo. That's a little silly, but I can't just not add a car as a playable character. I tried to list each character in roughly chronological order, but do know there were some inconsistencies. With some series like Yakuza, I put spin-off characters at the end, and with other series I didn't. I am a big Yakuza fan, you probably could have told that by the amount of characters from Yakuza I added to the roster. Anyways, the order of characters wasn't really the focus since I had so many to go through. Why is Florian the 9th character on the roster? Because I thought of adding him then, that's why. Like I said, sometimes choices I make with the roster aren't that deep. I also categorized characters from Donkey Kong, like the original arcade Donkey Kong games, as being part of the Mario series. And that's kind of controversial, I know, since they were called Donkey Kong. Again, I just didn't really think of it that deeply. I don't think it's that big of a deal. The indie game section is one of the parts I'm the most proud of. There's about 1,000 characters that get pretty obscure. At one point, I literally went on itch.io and pressed the random game button. I really enjoyed doing that one, even if it was especially painful to find pictures for all of them. I think that's about all I have to add to the video for now, so thanks for the support again. If you have any more questions or characters to add, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. I still can't believe I finished that video.